Recording in progress.
Hello, we are in our Profit Leak series, how to build labor costs that actually protect your profit. How to build labor costs that actually protect your profit. And so if you're out there and you're watching and maybe you're in the situation, you're not sure how to price your labor, how to put your numbers together, maybe you don't know your numbers, this specific session is just for you. I want to show all of those, specifically those that are in construction, how you can look at pricing your labor even when you don't know exactly what it should cost according to the market. So it's very, very important that you are able to come up with a general idea, even if you don't know the specifics of what the cost should be. There will be times where you won't receive subcontractor bids, you won't receive any quotes, and you still would like to submit your price to that client, to that owner, to have a chance to win that contract or win that award. And so we want to make sure you're doing everything possible to prevent a loss, to prevent going out of business, to prevent anything bad happening. And it's very, very important that you go into it with the mindset that I'm going to put my best number on it, my best number on it. And what does that mean? That means it's an educated number. It's not a number that I pulled out of the air. Unfortunately, I have too many clients. They really don't know their numbers. When I ask, how did you come up with that number? They scramble, they rumble around trying to figure out, well, how did I come up with that number? Listen, I'm going to show you precisely how to arrive to a specific number that is going to be in the ballpark. You won't be far off. I'm getting to productions. I'm going to show you how to factor in productions for your labor costs and also understand how you can incorporate it into your bid process. Now listen, this is a pre-course prior to our estimating pro course. I'm going to say that again. This is a pre-course prior to our estimating pro course. So May the 12th through the May the 16th of 2025, we will have our estimating pro course live. Our estimating pro course live. And similar to our PM Plus Site Super Pro course, I'm basically opening up my entire company to show you exactly what I do to win $1 million contracts. Exactly what I did for years and years, ever since we started in 2004. It's now 2025. So 21 years later, this process is still current, it's still relevant, and it still works. And I want to show you everything I've done. I've learned it from a lot of the large companies that are out there, the Skanskas of the world, which is an international billion-dollar company. I've worked for them, for Hardin Construction, for KHS&S. So not only have I worked on the construction management side or the general contracting side, but I've also worked on the subcontracting side. So I've seen the best of both worlds, being able to not only estimate for a large GC, but also estimate for a large subcontractor, understanding the processes from A to Z, knowing how to work with owners, knowing how to put together numbers all the way down to counting the screws. Yes, I could factor it down to counting the screws. Some of you all are just going to Home Depot and picking up a box because you're not really sure what you need, but I'm factoring on large projects these types of quantities. And so I want to show you in our estimating pro course so many things about the complete pre-construction process, from how you start with bid solicitations all the way until you turn over your pricing, turn over your estimates to the management team so they actually start the job on site. I'm going to show you how to run a pre-construction meeting with the client. So there'll be times that you may need to meet with the client to understand not only their performer, but also understand their program and how you're able to put pricing together. Some clients may ask you uh, to work on a complete pre-construction phasing approach, meaning they desire you to provide a phase one estimate, phase two estimate, and a phase three estimate. You may be saying, Michael, I have no idea what that is. Let me give it to you very briefly. So they may say, hey, we have a napkin sketch of what we would like to do. We have a program of what we want. And they will say, as a general contractor, are you able to provide me a conceptual price? So that's normally a phase one. Are you able to provide me a conceptual price? And at that time, we're putting numbers together based on gross square footage, okay? If you don't know what that is, don't worry. Just come to the Estimating Pro course and I'll show you more details about that. And then we move to the next phase where they've hired an architect and an engineer, and they start putting the design development documents together. These are documents that help formulate the floor plan, the elevations, just give us an idea exactly what the client is desiring, but it may be missing some of the details of connection points, the details of how things go together, but it's an overall idea. We call that phase two. And so I want you to understand this is something you can do. And then once we move from phase two, you'll move over to a phase three estimate where you'll put together numbers that will utilize and incorporate the construction set of documents. So now you have a complete construction set. Sometimes the client will ask you to compare your phase two pricing to your phase three pricing. And we call that a reconciliation estimate. All right, reconciliation estimate. Now, some of you will say, Michael, you're throwing out big words. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's okay. Just come to the Estimating Pro course and I'll show you more about that process. But today we want to talk about how do we develop our labor numbers? How do we develop our labor numbers? And so this is important to understand that it's a problem when we're guessing labor, when we're guessing what the number should be. We will overbid, possibly lose jobs, or sometimes we can underbid and lose money. And so labor drives real risk and not just materials. Matter of fact, it is easier to price materials than labor. It is easier to price materials than labor. And I will say it again, your highest risk is on your labor and not your materials. I'm going to say that one more time. Your highest risk is on your labor and not your materials. If your production rates are off, or if you misestimate the amount of time it would take a person to complete a task, then it could cost you way more than you having to go back to the store to pick up another box of screws. I want you to understand, most people, when they lose money, they lose it on the labor side, not the material side. Most of us can quantify the materials that are needed. Every now and then we may have a bust when it comes to figuring out our waste factors for extra to have enough. Let's say I thought I needed 2 sheets of plywood, but once I start cutting the sheets to align with the spacing of the studs, now all of a sudden I realize I need 3 sheets in order to complete it. So every now and then, hey, I have to go buy extra. But when it comes to your time has a higher multiplier, thereby giving you more risk. Okay? And so what is a production rate? What is a production rate? It's the amount of work installed per labor hour. The amount of work installed per labor hour. And what does that mean? So think about it like this in this example. We have 120 square feet of drywall, installed per man hour. And I know the world is changing. We don't like to say man hour because women are included in this. So let's just say people hours. So if a person can install 120 square foot of drywall in an hour, that is a production rate. And so it's important for us to navigate, okay, how do we come up with these production rates, because this will directly tie into our costs. I'm going to say that again. It's important to identify the production rate because this will directly tie in to our costs. Unfortunately, too many clients that I have no idea how to factor in how much labor they're going to spend. And I'm going to show you right now how we do this. But most importantly, you have to understand, even if you know how much you're paying one of your staff members, you must also know how much can they produce. I'm going to back that thing up because somebody missed it. Even though you know how much you're paying that staff member, maybe you're paying them $10 an hour or $20 an hour, right? So that's what we call a base rate. I'm going to show you in just a second that there's more costs that are indirect that maybe you're not considering, and so you still may be underpricing yourself just using only a base rate. And I'm going to show you what we call a loaded rate or a burdened rate, and I'm going to show you that in a second. However, before you get into all that, you need to understand production. Everybody say this, production. No, you didn't say it. Everybody say this, production. We want to understand what is the production. So anything that's being installed, it can be broken down into a production rate. Well, how many of these can I do in an hour? We like to use hours because it's the easiest math to come up with, okay? It's the easiest math to come up with. So we factor everything by the hour first, and then we multiply however many hours being worked, normally 8 in a day, to get days. So for instance, if I'm able to install 100 square foot of drywall in an hour based on a work day, in a normal 8-hour work day, I should be able to do 800 square foot per hour. Now, that may not factor in downtime, lunch breaks, stocking the material, clean up, right? If we break early to clean up every day, maybe my full work day was only 7 hours and 8 hours. So you can start thinking about, hey, I need to maybe reduce my production rate or reduce the number of hours that we're actually working, okay? And I'm going to show you in a second how we actually factor those numbers, okay? So I want you to think of this example. What is production rate? It's the amount of work installed per labor hour, okay? So everything, again, has a rate, and it's based on whatever the unit of measure is. It's based on the unit of measure. Unit of measure is items like square foot, linear foot, each, pieces, cartons, buckets, right? So it's based on a certain unit of measure. So number one, whatever it is, you need to identify the unit of measure, and number two, you need to have a good understanding of how to quantify how much can be produced by your staff. Now listen, I know everyone may have that A team member, and maybe if you're not so lucky, you have that C team member. What do you mean by that, Michael? You have that person that's always on time, that does everything right the first time, and there may be a drywall installer and they're able to install 100 square foot per hour. However, maybe that C player that's on your team, they show up late, they're slow, they're not as productive, they don't wear their tool pouches on them, so they're running around picking up tools where they left them, and so they're wasting time, so they're not as productive. So maybe that person only installs 60 square foot of drywall per hour, right? So I know you may run into these scenarios where you have different production rates based on the person, but I'll show you later how you can come up with either a crew rate or an average rate based on your team, so you can identify, okay, how much is realistic for us to install. So it doesn't matter if it's drywall, acoustical ceilings, floor tile, TVs, furniture, bricks, CMU block, concrete, roofing shingles, windows, doors, right? Electrical pipe, plumbing, HV mechanical systems. It doesn't matter. All these things can have a production rate. All right? Everybody say production rate. Okay, so this is how you calculate labor hours. You want to take the total quantity, and divide it by your production rate. So we're calculating the actual hours. Okay, so how long will it take to complete this task? So once you do your takeoff, you're going to identify, just like in this example, I have a total of 3,000 square feet of drywall. Well, based on our production rate of 120 square foot per hour, that equals 25 hours. So that says, based on this production rate, it's going to take 25 hours for us to complete this task. Now you have a number where you can factor in the multiplier of your actual staff cost, or whatever you pay your staff, to figure out the total cost. All right, so I know that was a mouthful, but I want to make sure I walk you through this. The first and most important thing is identify your total quantity for whatever that item is, okay? Then the second thing is to identify your actual production rate. Okay, what's up, Elizabeth? Identify your actual production rate. So everyone can use this rule of thumb. And so, having estimated my entire career, so since 1997, I've been estimating. So I can't believe it's been almost 28 years in this December that I've estimated. And the way to go about doing it is figure out, well, how much can you do? How much can you do? I always start with that, because I recognize for myself, if I can do it and I do not do this task every day, surely somebody else should be able to do it if this is all they do every day, day after day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and sometimes on Saturday and Sunday. Right? If they're able to do it every day, they should be able to do more than me. So I take myself for an example. And so this is where having some actual field experience is very helpful. I'm going to say this again. This is where it's actually helpful to have some field experience for yourself. So if you're that type of owner that's very hands off and you just want everyone to do everything for you, it will be hard for you to come up with these numbers without asking someone. So there's been situations like I realized, hey, I'm not an electrician. So maybe I need to talk to an electrician about running pipe. How much conduit can you run in an hour? If it's 3/4 conduit, I have to be specific. I can't just say Carflex. Don't worry about the terms. Just go with the story. Just go with the story. Carflex is like plastic conduit versus metal conduit. Well, they have to actually use a tool to bend the metal conduit. So I would assume that's slower production rate, right? I would assume you can get the plastic conduit installed a lot faster. You don't have to bend it. It bends itself, right? You just zoop, 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 putting it up. So when I used to do a lot of my own home improvement, this is where I got more experience in being able to understand productions. Though I was an estimator working for a drywall company, I would basically take cost history information from my boss, cost history information from previous jobs. That is another way you can get this information, right? But for me, it was important for me to really identify, self-identify, let me see how fast I can do it. So when I installed tile in a room, in the bedroom, it was 20 by 20. Figure out how long did it take me, right? If it took me 2 days, that was, let's call it 16 hours to do 20 by 20, I would take my 400 square feet divided by 16 hours. That tells me how many square foot I can do in an hour. It's pretty simple, right? So that's around 30 square feet, roughly, a little bit less. So that gave me an idea of what a production rate is. And so I like to say this: if you are around these field type of installations, you can factor in how much you really could factor as a production rate. So Isabel, just the same way for you. How You know, you can figure out based on traffic, based on the area, well, how many miles can a trip run, right? You're able to come up with the production to figure out, well, how many trips can we do in a day, right? You're able to back into a lot of these calls by doing these types of things. So you having that experience really, really helps. Why? Because sometimes your staff will tell you something that's not true. I know you never believe they will lie to you. Maybe they won't, but sometimes they don't know. But it's important that you know for yourself what can be done. So that's why I always say try to figure it out based on what you're able to do. And then in cases where you need someone else's expertise, then you ask that person, hey, I've never installed floor tile before, or I never installed this specific material before. How much can you do in an hour? And I always use the hour. Do not go by day, because no one can think about that. Maybe they can think about, I did all of this in a day. Maybe you have to back into that by hour, right? So you can go either direction, but most people can figure how much they do easier by hour than by day. Okay, so you want to do that. All right, and once you have your production rate, you have your total quantity of whatever you're doing, you have your production rate. Now you can figure how long it's going to take to complete the task, your total labor hours. Okay, so once you have identified your production rate, your total quantity, your total labor hours, now the next step is to factor in your unit labor costs. Your unit labor costs. And we're going to do this by, number one, ensuring that we've identified our labor burden. We've identified our labor burden. Now, this can be identified as the base wage plus payroll taxes. So that should be Social Security, Medicare, FUTA, right? So if you recognize that you've hired a person to work for you and they're a W-2 employee, and you have to pay payroll taxes, right? So if you are not factoring in that cost, you're only factoring your base rate. So that's what we call a unloaded or unburdened rate, or a raw rate. All these terms are synonymous. Raw rate, unburdened rate, base rate, right? But we want to add our burden to it, so it's a totally loaded rate. Okay, so we are capturing all the other indirect costs that are associated with having that employee. Okay, so I want you to think about all the payroll taxes, right? I have a form that I'm going to show you how I use this form to calculate what the burden hourly rate is. So we have Social Security, we have Medicare, FUTA, which is the unemployment, workers' comp, health insurance. If you're paying them, let's say, any portion of their medical, let's say you only pay 50% of their medical insurance, or maybe you pay 100%, whatever that is, you have costs associated with that rate. If you match maybe and do an IRA or 403B or whatever, retirement, and you start doing these matching plans, now you also have additional costs with those rates. Small tools. Now sometimes with construction companies, if you have tools, you may be able to cost it to the job specifically, but let's just say you have PPE or certain things that they need to have all the time. I'll give it a great example for small tools. Now, none of us that I believe are out there installing scaffolding, but I recognize my scaffolding company, they sent the crew out there. They were all pretty younger gentlemen that came out to the job site, and they all had their lanyards, and they had their safety attire, their PPE. They had everything tethered. Their tools were tethered and everything. Tethered means if they climbed the scaffold and they dropped their hammer, it wouldn't fall. It was tethered to their tool pouch. so it wouldn't fall and be an overhead hazard. And so maybe if you're purchasing all these types of things for your employees, that's cost that you are incurring, right? Maybe you want to find a way to get that cost back. So you would add that to their overall pay. All right, so you come up with a rate, so you're recouping those costs as you're charging your clients. Okay, so maybe small tools, PPE, right? Personal protection and equipment, their uniform. Maybe if you want them to go out and wear certain apparel that you pay for, maybe they don't have to pay for it. So maybe it's a company shirt or a polo or even a suit coat that has your company information on it. Whatever that is, you can tie all of these indirect costs to their actual unit labor rate or their hourly rate. All right. Okay. And then the last thing, before I show you how to do this, the last thing I want to talk about is sometimes we may have to adjust for for productivity. Sometimes we have to adjust for productivity. So let's say, for instance, it's going to rain, it's going to be extremely hot. So case in point, during the summers here in Florida, our roofers, especially the good ones that really care about safety, our roofers will take a break every hour. They will come off the roof and take a 15-minute break every hour, right? Because they don't want their staff to become heat exhausted or have any type of dehydration or overheating. So they'll let them come down, cool off for 15 minutes before they go back to work. Well, how does that impact your production rate, right? Or how does that impact how many hours they're out there working? So I want you to start thinking about now, maybe I have to tweak some of these production rates based on how productive they actually are. Okay, maybe it's an area where there's tight access. Like for you, Isabel, in transportation, maybe there are certain areas that have heavy traffic, right? So now you realize the total number of miles that a person can do in a day will be significantly less. Or maybe it's a certain time of the day and you recognize, oh, this is going to directly impact, our productivity. So I can't price it the same way I would price any other project or job or contract, right? If there's site security requirements, phasing or night work, I know for people that work third shift, their productivity normally is lower. Okay, and most of them get paid a higher wage. Okay, so now you're dealing with two things. You have lower productivity and a higher wage. Now, guess what? How that's going to impact your costs? It's going to drive it up significantly. Okay, so I want you to start thinking about those things. Okay, so now I'm going to take some time to actually show you. First, let's go to production rates. Let me pull this up for you so you can see a little bit how I look at these numbers. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I think I can make it a little bit bigger. All right, so we have these tasks here that we have to complete, and maybe you're working on pricing or estimate. The first thing we want to do is come up with the total. So if you're doing takeoff on blueprints or on screen on a digital plans, whatever, you want to identify each task, identify each installation, and then break it down by that unit of measure, right? So for somebody like Isabel who's in transportation, maybe you're going to do this by miles. Or maybe you're going to do it by trips. You probably should try to look at it both ways to see which makes the most sense, right? So you want to see what is your cost per mile, depending on the staff and maybe that area. Now you can you can start figuring out, hey, when we charge our clients for a certain trip, how much are we actually making on this if our cost per mile is X? Okay, so that'll help you start seeing if you're being profitable or not, and you're not having to wait, months down the road. So first step, identify your total. Whatever the item is, factor what is the total based on that unit of measure. All right. So here these items are based on square foot. All right. So let's say, for instance, a sheet of drywall, and I'm going to just put a note here. Let's just take a sheet of drywall let's just say a house. It's going to be a 4x8 sheet, a 4 foot by 8 sheet. So that's 32 square feet. Okay. Now, surely I can hang one sheet of drywall that's 4x8 in 1 hour. I would say on a bad day, I can at least hang one every 10 minutes. So if I can hang one every 10 minutes, then that means I can do 6 in an hour. So I would take my 6 times 32, because 32 is the size of my sheet. Okay, so I have 6 sheets I can do in an hour every 10 minutes times the 32 square feet that's in the sheet. So now that tells me I can do 192 square feet per hour. Okay, so if I can do 192 square foot per hour, and I have 3,000 of them, all I need to do is divide 3,000 by the 192. Okay, that's all I have to do is divide the 3,000 by the 192. Okay, and then that number is going to give me 15.6 labor hours. Okay, so that's how long it's going to take me, 15.6 labor hours to hang 3,000 square foot of drywall. Okay, and factoring it's an 8-hour day and it's just me, it's going to take me really 2 days. So if I'm pricing this, I'm not going to price it as 1.95 days. I'm going to price it as 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 days. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it 2 days, right? And so the next thing I would do, let's just say this is me and I'm Michael. Let's just say I'm at a burden rate, and we'll talk about this in a second. I'm a burden rate of $40 an hour. That's my burden rate, $40 an hour. And it's going to take me 2 days. So that means I have my $40 an hour times 2 days times 8 hours a day. Got it? Times 8 hours a day. So that's going to cost me $640. Right? So now, watch this. I'm going to show you something else you can do. Now, if I say, well, now, Michael, how much is your unit cost? So my unit square foot cost for labor, I'm going to take this 640, because this is how much it's going to cost me total, and divide it by the total quantity. I'm going to take this divided by the total quantity. So that lets me know it cost me 21 cents a square foot. 21 cents a square foot. So now if I have the same conditions and the same production rate everywhere, I know it costs me 21 cents a square foot. So I can always use this in the future for other jobs if the conditions are the same. So I just have to remember, make sure that there's nothing else that impacts the productivity. If the conditions are the same, most likely I can use the same unit labor costs. Okay, unit labor costs. All right, so I want to make sure you got that. All right, really simple. Okay, so let's take tile. I have 2,000 square foot of tile in this house. Let's just say I need to maybe just say this is just to install only, and it's no grout. So, because usually grout is a secondary step. So I'm going to just install it. And I'm going to say, hey, how many? Well, sometimes you may say, well, what size is the tile? Let's just go by 12 by 12, right? And I'm going to say I can probably do in an hour, I probably can get 15 pieces down. So if I can get 15 pieces, that's 15 square foot. Got it? Now, if this was a 24 by 12, and I said I can still get 15 pieces down, this is going to be 15 times 2, because 2 foot by 1 foot is 2 square feet. So it equals 15 times 2. So I can do 30 square foot an hour. So notice, depending on the size of the material can impact your production rate. How fast you can get it done impacts it. But that's how you do this math, okay? And once you figure out the production rate, then you see how many total hours it's going to take. All right, and then we get to the number of days. All right, so this would actually take me 4 days to do by myself. So let's say it's going to be 2 of us. My formula not working. Hold on a second. Let me copy this down. Let's just say it's 2 of us doing this work. It's actually going to take 4.16 crew days. Now, even with that, it's more than 4 days, so I'm coming back at some point, so I'm charging them for a whole day, right? But I have 2 people, okay? So it's important to understand this now is crew days, So don't mess this up, crew days, all right? So if I have 5 crew days, and let's just say it's Sammy and Sally working. Sammy has a rate of $30 an hour. Sally has a loaded rate of $20 an hour. Okay. We're going to take how many crew days? 5 crew days, right? So that's 40 hours a person. You got it? So if I just multiply their dollar, cancel. I'm going to multiply their dollar amount times 5 days times 8 hours. There we go. Okay. So that's Sammy's cost. That's for his 5 days and his 8 hours per day. So 40 times 30. Same way with this person. Okay? I'm going to take the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take his 20 times the 5 days times the 8 hours. So that's 40 times 20, that's 80. Now we come and we total this, and we have $2,000 to do this work. We're going to do the same unit square foot, and we're going to take this 2,000, and we're going to divide this 2,000 by this 2,000. It's $1 per square foot to install this tile with this crew based on their rate. That's actually pretty accurate. All right, so that lets me know that this production rate right here is going to get me $1 a square foot on labor, or $2,000. Make sense? Any questions? Any questions on that? Any questions on that? Okay, so now that I've explained how to use and factor your labor rates, I'm going to show you now how to identify whether it's a loaded rate or burdened rate. Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so now everybody should have a sheet like this for your staff. Okay, if you're in the mentorship program, this is in the portal. All right, where you can access this same document. So this is just a worksheet to calculate your labor burden. So I had this sheet and I put all my staff into one, so I actually could come to this summary sheet and quickly look at all of them at one time. Okay, so let's say for instance I take myself, let's just say I had whatever my base rate is or was. Let me blow this up just a little bit more. So let's just say I had my base rate right here. You start off with the base rate, and this is what they make annually. Okay, now this is an important number to always remember. There's 2,080 hours, work hours in a year. Okay, there's 2,080 hours, work hours in a year. Always remember that number, because you'll always use it. If they're part-time working 20 hours, it's 1040. Okay, now I have to pay Social Security tax, Medicare. So right now these are the current rates. So I just factor for the year, this is the dollar amount. So you can see in the cell up here, I have the 82,160 times the 6.25. Well, it's 6.2. So let's change that, 6.2. All right, and then this one, I have the 82,160 by 1.5, right? And these are actual current rates. So now these two together add to 6,000. Let's say you had some type of short-term disability or long-term disability that you paid for your staff. This is not employee paid. This is what you pay. So if you don't pay anything, you don't include anything. Okay? So if you had something, you would add it here. All right? If you had something, you would add it here. All right? So medical care. So let's say you don't have medical premiums for your staff, then it would be 0. But if you do, what is the yearly amount? The yearly amount. So here, at the time, it was $635.73 per month. So times 12, that's the yearly amount. Okay, so we add that. Same for dental. Any life insurance that we had, AD&D we had, right? We add all of that. Now, any retirement, same thing. If you do IRA contribution match, so let's say they decide to put in 3% and you're matching the 3%. Whatever that 3% is, let's just say 0.03 times the 82,160. All right, 0.03 times this, right? So that would be 2,464, right? If I was matching it, this is what I'm contributing to match their number. Workers' comp, this is a rate you will find from your DEC page. When you look at your declaration page from your policy, they will break down whatever your work comp numbers are based on what classification your staff member is. So all of these people will have a different work comp rate. You see mine is 27 cents per thousand. Well, this person was let me blow this up. This person was 1.86 per 100. Mine was 27 cents per 100. There's 1 point. Why? Because they're in a different function. They're in the field. Okay? So this person, my wife, she was at 25 cents per 100. Right? Let's check somebody else. Let's check this person, 1.84 per 100. So I would have to actually identify their labor code or their classification for what they do. Okay? Now, if your business, you may not have all these classifications. You may only have one or two. But you need to use what's in your deck page for that. All right? If you have any vacation time that you're paying. So here I had 3 weeks off, 3 sick days, and 8 holidays. So I put all my vacation time. This all my PTO. I'm going to say that again. Because I had been with the company so long, it was in our manual. 3 weeks vacation paid. 3 days sick. 8 days holidays. So you have to include the holidays. If you're paying for it, right? You're paying them, so you're paying for it. So what does that equal? That was $8,000. So if you're just figuring, hey, let me just factor the base rate, now you're missing all of this money that you're actually paying, okay? And here's your FUTA, okay? And so when I total all this together, it totaled up to $25,000. So in order to figure what the percentage is, okay, let's figure the percentage real quick. Y'all with me? I want to make sure you're still with me. Let's figure the percentage real quick. So if I take $25,000, the total of all this stuff, and divide it by my base rate, it came up to 31%. So that means my burden rate is 1.3116 times whatever base it is. Make sense? Okay. So now if I want to break this back into an hourly rate, right? I'm going to add my 25 plus my 82, right? And then I'm going to divide it by that magic number I gave you. Remember I gave you that magic number? How many hours in a year? 2,080. I'm going to divide this by 2,080. That's going to tell me this is now my loaded rate. My loaded rate. So remember when we did this exercise, and I said, well, I think I'm $40. Well, really, I'm 51 point whatever, 61. That just took my costs up. So that's why it's important to make sure your burden rate is accurate. That's why it's important to make sure your burden rate is accurate. Okay? All right, that was a good class. All right, any questions? If you have any questions, you're able to come off mute. I'll take any questions at this time. All right. And so just a reminder, May the 12th through May the 16th, we're having our Pro Course estimating course. It's a 5-night session that will begin nightly. And so I'm sending out emails for that. If you would like to know more about that, all you need to do is to go to our link and look out for more information on how you can register for that course. I want to show you how you can sign up for that as well. But I also want to just kind of recap some of the things you're going to get. You're going to learn the entire pre-construction process. So from A to Z. So when we first start with pursuing a bid, pursuing a project, and we're trying to price it and put numbers together, all the way to going out soliciting subcontractors. Some of you have never put a bid manual together. That means you're giving bid instructions. You're giving directions to the subcontractors or the vendors you want to price your job. And you're telling them specifically what you desire to receive, and you need to know how to put a bid manual together. identifying all the scopes of work. So, we may have 40, sometimes 50 different contractors, subcontractors. You need to have a specific scope of work for them identified so they can price it how you want it. Otherwise, they're just going to turn in a number, and it's going to take you more time to compare apples to apples. Okay? Because what you'll receive if you don't tell them what the price is, apples and oranges. And now you're on the phone longer, you're having meetings longer to try to get them to reprice things how you want it priced, and it will extend the estimating process, thereby costing you more money on the tail end because you spent more time on phone calls and in meetings trying to make sure you had the right price and the right coverage. So I'm going to show you all that. I'm going to show you how to put a GMP binder together. GMP is guaranteed maximum price. Many government contracts will require you to put this together where you have to demonstrate how you solicited the job publicly, where you have a true schedule of values of all the scopes you bought out. You have bid tabulations where you compare all your subcontractors to one another, right, to ensure that that client is getting the best price and all the scope is complete, where you include your schedule, you include your RFIs, you include all the documentations based on what the architect and engineer provided. You've listed out your contract documents so they know exactly what you price. You listed out any exclusions and clarifications, like it's really, really detailed. And I want to show you how to put that all together. And then we'll also have a night where we're going to show you how to read blueprints, right? I never thought about doing it, but I'm doing it this time. We're going to show you, give you a little intro, and show you how to read blueprints so you can be better at doing your takeoffs, right? And then we're going to show you how to do takeoffs and also price it all. All right, so that's our 5-day. I'm laying it all on the line. I'm showing you everything I have, 20 plus years of doing this, and I want to show you exactly what I'm doing. So listen, you can actually sign up for this pro course by going to this link. All right, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. All right, now for those that may watch this replay, you have a certain date to lock in your discount, because only early birds catch the worm, which also is the discount. So if you wait too late, you may miss the discount for this. All right, so make sure you take advantage of that and hop on that right away. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, family, for being on the call. I ask that you continue to do your best and strive to be great. And so, like I do all the time, if you don't mind, if I pray over you and trust that God will help you in your business. Father, we say thank you for this opportunity to learn more about how to protect our profits and how to price our labor accordingly. And I just pray for each person that's on the call, each person that may watch this replay, that you bless them, bless their business, continue to guide them and protect them, even from their mistakes, even from oversight, even from things that they didn't intend. But I just pray that you keep giving them wisdom and applying this knowledge to help them be better. We say thank you for all these things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, family, God bless you all. We'll see you soon.